All right, making moves. Welcome back. It's Tim and Tim, your favorite hosts. We have been on the road quite a bit and have not been live. We posted a couple recordings, which everyone seemed to have really enjoyed. And, Tim, I don't know, I'm going to toot my own horn here, but I think that just goes to prove that we've been spitting value the whole time. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I totally enjoyed those recordings.
Yeah,
And what's
because it's always relevant. It's always
yeah.
relevant.
Well, and honestly, guys, like, sorry, not trying to trick you, but I went back and looked at the posts and everything, and people were commenting during the shows that were recorded, and hopefully everybody got some value in the responses. I tried to respond where I saw posts, but yeah, man, like this stuff is relevant the whole way through, no matter where you are.
Yeah,
Um,
appreciate
it's
that, Dennis. I know you're here every time, man. Appreciate you always saying what's up and watching our shows and things and being involved. So appreciate
Yeah,
that.
agreed. So yeah, I love the fact that we're able to put content. I'll give John Casman
Evergreen.
yeah, I'll give John Casman a shout out. He's the one that kind of taught. I know it's not his phrase, but he's the one that taught it to me. So yeah, it's evergreen content, right?
Mhm.
So
Cool. All right. So this week, Tim and Tim, we've been on the road a lot. We've visited properties, we've had investor meetings, we've gone to mastermind events. It has been quite a hectic September and October. Been doing a whole lot of stuff, and it's really given me time to pause and kind of reflect on things. And what I really wanted to reflect on was what got us here today is something that never really goes away, and that's showing up. The difference between you and somebody else that's going to be successful and not be successful is showing up every single time, even when it's hard. And I think, we were talking about it. Tim Best made a great post on LinkedIn. I didn't even read it. This just so happened to be a coincidence that this video was about exactly what he was talking about. So I was like, you know what? Hey, great minds think alike. But really, at the end of the day, it was like, when we're trying to be involved in something new or different, the difference is showing up. And Tim and I, we were at our GoBundance mastermind event last week, and everybody knew everybody. And I felt like this strange outsider that I didn't know anybody, and I felt ashamed. And that's really hard to say, right? Because I think we're probably harder on ourselves than we probably should be. But I felt ashamed that I paid, it was like 10 grand to be part of this mastermind group, and I had not shown up to a single event. I had not joined any of the micro tribe calls. I did not put in the work and the effort to get the value out of the group. And that's
yeah,
100% on me. And what that really made me do is reflect back and say, well, how did I get to where I am today? And it was by showing up all the time. When I was trying to get started in this real estate industry, I was showing up to all the Zoom calls. I was showing up to all the Facebook live streams. I was going to all the networking events. I was going to all of the in-person conferences and things. And I was shaking hands and I was making relationships with people. And at the end of the day, that's what made me successful in this industry, is by the relationships that I built. And I feel very involved. And I feel like a lot of people know who Tim and
yeah.
Tim are because of how much we show up. But when we go to the GoBundance things, nobody knows who we are. They're just like,
Nope.
"Oh, I think I recognize you somehow." I'm like, "Well, it's probably from social media, right?" So there's a clue that it works. But really, man, if you want to be involved and you want to be successful into doing something different, you have to put in the time, the work, and the effort and show up and build those relationships and prioritize those relationships and those experience above. I don't want to say above all else, but it has to be higher in your priority list than something that is not as important, that's not going to bring you as much value.
Yeah, man. We were there, guys, and I mean, I think one of the jokes that goes around, at least I hear it quite a bit, is that I'm naturally an introvert, and this is one of the first events in a long time that made me feel like an introvert. Um, because we go to events, and because of the LinkedIn community and Facebook and some of the stuff we do, a lot of the events we go to, people recognize us, people know who we are, people come up to us. I'm I'm pretty easy when people come up to me, right? But putting myself in that circle of guys standing around chatting, all that clearly know each other, walking into that circle, that's not my game. That's not comfortable there. And it was one of the first times, like a week ago today, Tuesday, I went out and did an event with a bunch of guys. And at the end, we're all waiting for the bus. there's like a circle of guys, and then there's like two or three of us kind of hanging out on the perimeter, and I was one of them. And I'm just like watching these guys. I'm like, I want to be in the circle. Like they look like they're having fun.
I want to be part of the cool club.
Yeah, but I wasn't. And that was the first time during the event that I was like, these guys clearly know each other. Like that's not just a bunch of guys who've just met talking. These guys clearly know each other. And then as the event went on, man, it was like people up on stage, like Camille, right?
Camille.
Like when he got up on stage and people are like standing up in the audience, like saying things before he says them. There were clearly inside jokes in his presentation that everybody in the room was like,
I
you
didn't
know,
get him.
I didn't get them, but everybody else did.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're watching that stuff and you're like, yeah, there's a ton of value in this room. There's a ton of value in being connected to this room, and I've completely missed it because
Mhm.
I've ignored it. I've ignored it.
No,
Um,
we just have not prioritized it.
yeah, I put it as I've ignored it. I got to be honest, because I and prioritize it right, but at the end of the day, I knew it was there.
Yeah.
I just didn't tap into it.
Right. But
And
there's something about, not overstretching yourself, right?
sure,
It's committing to the right amount of stuff
right,
because you can spread this was the theme. Everyone on stage talked about it. Even, Tim Grover was kind of the keynote speaker, and he talked about an inch wide and a mile deep. And that's important. It's important to go an inch wide and a mile deep because the relationships that you build along the way in a mile deep scenario are going to far outlast the ones that you have had made acquaintances with because you're going to have a lot of acquaintances. I don't know.
yeah,
I mean, I know there's people here that have gone to those big conferences where there's 1,000 people there. You probably shake hands and kiss babies with a lot of people. How many of them do you actually keep up with? Maybe one, maybe, right? Or more often than not, it's probably you're going to meet the people that you put in the effort and you showed
right,
up to all the Zoom calls. And maybe it was 20 people all the time. That 20 people click. Those are the people that are going to want to hang out with each other. They're going to say, "What's up?" They're like, "Oh, it's so great to finally meet you in person." In order to do that, you need to show up all the time. Not all the time. You got to be there, right? If you're
yeah.
not present, you're not going to be able to take advantage of the situations that are in front of you.
Yeah, yeah, and it's real easy, 100%, man. But it's real easy to like go to those events. Here's an example. Like you go to some of these conferences, right? And like you're talking about, you meet people, and then how many of them do you actually stay in touch with, right?
Mhm,
What's interesting about this group is you meet people, and then there's like 200 ways within the group itself to stay in touch with them. Like the
mhm,
group schedules things for people to connect with each other. For instance, Tim and I are both in the Carolinas. So there's a Carolinas Go Abundance group that Adam, I got to give you a big shout out. You do a great job of scheduling things. And that you go to this event, everybody all over the country is there. Quite frankly, everybody from all over the world is there.
mhm.
And then when I come back to the Carolinas, it doesn't cost me a thing to easily go to these monthly get-togethers that the guys in the Carolinas are having, right? And then what day is your Go Pod call? Mine's on a Friday.
Mine's Friday
Um,
mornings at 8 a.m.
yeah, so and then every week we have smaller groups that we're automatically connected to through phone calls and Zoom calls and things like that. And it's just there's a lot of ways inherently built into the group to stay together and connect, right? And it was just one of those moments, right? Like we're talking about, it's like you got to show up to make the difference. You've got to show up. You've got to you got to, like Tim said, prioritize these things. and
Mhm.
and I think we both left saying, I'm going to prioritize this over the
Oh,
next year,
absolutely
right?
did. I
Yeah,
have been super more engaged in the Facebook group. I have gone through my calendar and tried to organize they're like the multifamily apartments call. They actually moved it. It's on Fridays now from like 3 to 4 o'clock or something like that. I was like, okay, whatever's on my calendar, I moved it around and I'm prioritizing being present in that group because multifamily is what we do. That's where we thrive. And I was like, well, not only could I probably receive value from people, I can also provide value to people
right.
in that same group. And it's kind of nice, feeling like the smallest fish in the room. I mean, you see some guys in there, like one guy, one guy is sitting next to me at the table had $1 billion Amazon revenue store, right? I mean, he had 1,000 employees, and he's not much older than I am, and he was super calm and super quiet and reserved. And I ended up spending the whole evening with him because he was a super cool dude. And it was just like so unexpected. It's like, oh wow, well, holy smokes, you got 1,000 employees and you do $1 billion in revenue. But it's like it's nice to be in those rooms where you can learn from other people and learn from their experiences, and always leveling up. You always got to level up your circle. Do a friend audit. Like, hey, are my friends serving me? Like, do they
Right.
provide me any value? Do we provide any value to each other? And making sure that you're doing that friend audit. And that was Tim Grover's thing that he talked about. He was like, everyone wants to add to their life, add, but you can't always add things to your life. You run out of time, you stretch yourself too thin, you go back, you're not doing a mile, you're not doing a narrow but a mile deep, right? You're doing, you want to cast a wide net. And he's like, the number one thing that you need to do before you try to add is delete. And I was like, oh
Right.
my God, yeah, that hit kind of hard.
Man, talking about value, by the way, like, I mean, Camille is in the group, right? And his speech was awesome. Little R rated, but still awesome.
I like it because
Yeah,
that's the language I speak. It's like, oh,
I
okay,
think
I can
I think
comprehend
every
this.
third word was an F bomb at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah, it was.
But it was pretty cool. But then on top of that, right? Like, where else do you get to have like sit and listen to the mindset coach to Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, among others, just to name
Dwayne
two?
Wade too.
Yeah. Where do you else Charles Barkley, where else do you get to like listen to this guy and then talk to him? Like,
Yeah.
and then he hangs out and you get to just chat with him and, and ask him questions, like what was the Mamba really like, right? Like, those that was really, really, really valuable. And
Mhm.
then like you said, like to hear him talk about and guys, you can probably buy his book and get a lot of this, but to hear him talk about like the things that set those guys apart, right?
Mhm.
Like the mindset that sets those guys apart. And it's like, hey, in my own world, in my own business, what are the things I can take from that to bring home with me and deploy? Right. Like you said, like, hey, before you add, you probably need to do some deleting. And that's not easy, right? That's not an easy thing to do, but hey, it's when you're getting in the information from a guy like that, it's like maybe I should give some consideration to that thought process, right?
I think we should give ourselves a little bit more credit than you're giving ourselves right now. Like we've kind of realized that along the way. But this is like the great part about having a mentor or coach or anything like that is like we figured something out along the way, but they told us this in like a few seconds, and it was like, oh God, like that could have just bypassed a whole like 8 months worth of crap that we went through. Um, but what we realized was ever since we've opened up our property management company, we've become a vertically integrated company. We have to sell anything that's not managed by us because
Right.
ultimately what that's doing is you call it deleting. We're deleting the smaller properties that take our time away instead of being able to accomplish more things with the same amount of time because it's all under the same umbrella. So
Yeah.
it's not that the properties are doing bad or anything. It's just like, okay, well, what got us to where we are today, which around 1,000 doors, it's not going to get us to 3,000 doors, right? If we want to be able to grow and scale, we need to be able to do the same amount of work in the same time period, just on a bigger stage, a bigger volume. And the only way to do that is to get rid of the smaller properties that are not managed by us, that we have to, we have like an hour long phone call with this property management company, and we have another hour long phone call with this property management company. And before you know it, like Tim and I are working 12, 16-hour days again. And it's because our time is so diverted all over the place. One, it's in one bucket with our own property management company, which is, operations heavy. And then it's also in another bucket, which is asset management heavy. But when I look at my first bucket, which is my property management company, I'm doing my asset management and my property management at the same time. That's scalable, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the mindset that we have right now is by deleting some of the smaller properties and realizing gains and making money and everybody's going to be happy. And it's like, okay, well now we can focus on doing better assets, bigger deals. We've done less transactions this year, significantly less transactions, but we've bought more units this year, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. That's exactly the way that you want to be growing and scaling.
Yeah. And and then opening your mind up to like some other areas as well, right? Like, that's something I think has been a big growth for us this year. And I just wanted to go back to one thing. Talking about showing up. So showing up, being in the room. We had this one exercise one night where we're all sitting around the table. I think there were like 8 of us at a table. And they said, um, like, keep in mind, nobody's at this event who's worth less than $1 million net worth, right? And then there's a group there that's 5 million or more. And so I'm sitting at a table and we're going around the table talking about an exercise we've just done. And they said, okay, we're going to go oldest to youngest, right? Well, I went second.
Mhm.
I went second. And as we're going around the table, I'm like realizing not only am I the second oldest guy here, I'm worth the least of anybody at this table. And there were guys at that table who were 15 years younger than me, who were twice as far ahead
Oh.
as yeah. Hold on,
I'm
let
not
me
twice as
finish.
far as head, but I got you on
Who
the
are
age front.
twice as far as head of where I am today, right? And guys, I mean, not to toot my own horn, I'm in a pretty good position today. And these guys were crushing me, absolutely crushing me.
Mhm.
But I'm like sitting there and I'm like, holy shit, am I motivated right now? Like, am
Oh
I
yeah,
so freaking motivated right now? My A trait kicked in, my Tim
gas
Grover,
pedal.
my Tim Grover cleaner mentality starts to kick in, and I'm like, I applaud you, but you're motivating me. It's time for me to go do some winning, right?
Mhm.
And dude, I was like sitting at that table just like absorbing all of that. And I left there like super motivated. And I think that's part of showing up too, right? Like, is like capturing that energy from the other people around you and just like absorbing it and saying, man, like I see what you've done. I'm gonna go do it. Right.
There's that's a very beautiful way to say it, is absorbing the energy, because if you weren't present in that room, the event still would have happened and you would have not been
Yeah, yeah.
none the wiser, right?
No.
And we talk about it all the time. It's important to go to events, right? It's like when, look, I work from my house. I don't go anywhere unless I'm going to like to the gym or something, but otherwise, like, I work from home all the time. And it can get very lonely when you are head down working by yourself all the time. I mean, yeah, you have employees and partners and things like that, and you're talking to a lot of people, but going to interface with people gives you energy that you can't really describe. And it really helps you get back focus, because it's very easy to go down this trail and it can get kind of dark and gloomy, and like, they say it's lonely at the top, right? Well, it's like, well, if it's lonely at the top, why don't you go hang out where all the people that at the other top of the mountains are going, right? So it's, when you bring that energy into a single location, in a single room, it's something magical happens. It like makes you reassess and reevaluate and soak up the energy from other people's successes. And when, to relate this to when I was getting started in real estate, I used to listen to this podcast called The Real Estate Investing Journey by what is it, Todd Robinson or something? I can't remember his name exactly, based out of like Arizona. And basically the story, like, his podcast interviewers all the time would talk about the hardship that they went through. And when I was waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and then I was going to my day job, and then I was up till like 10, 11 o'clock analyzing deals and like being on the Zoom calls and showing up all the time, I would get burnt out and be like, man, this is exhausting. Right. But then I'd listen to these podcasts and I'd say, wow, they had it a lot harder than I did. What I'm going through is nothing compared to what they had to do. And it gives you that energy to kind of keep pushing forward and keep growing and keep doing, like, kind of staying on the straight and narrow and not getting distracted, because it's very easy to get distracted. Then the
Yeah.
same thing is true once you do your first couple of deals. Michael Blank, I met Michael Blank this past week. That was kind of cool. I was like, wow, man, I used to look up to you in a big way because of, like, your analyzer, and like I watched your videos and things and whatever, right? And everyone has their purpose along the way. But it was cool to be in the room with people like that, because now you're going to refocus that energy and you can refocus on what you're trying to achieve, and not just get, pulled to the left or to the right. And you absolutely need this community of people to connect with in order to make sure that you are doing what you said you're going to be doing, keeping promises to yourself that you made to yourself. Like, when you start saying, I am an apartment investor, I am a capital raiser, I am an asset manager, instead of I want to be, or I think I want to be, or I think I will be, it's no, I am. And you're speaking it into existence, you're manifesting those things, and just being around that energy of people. Doesn't matter if you're getting started or you're looking to grow from 1 million net worth to $10 million net worth, or from zero net worth to $1 million net worth. The mindset is still the same. The problems are different, but in nature, they're similar.
Yeah, but I think I think the one key thing it always comes back to, though, right, is like what we're talking about, showing up.
Showing up.
That is the difference maker. It is truly the difference maker. I talked about this at Burr 360 because somebody in the room asked me. They were like, I get asked this a lot, guys, and my answer is always the same. Action, right? Showing up, action. And somebody in the room asked me yet again. They were like, what's your secret sauce? Like, I think that's the phrase they actually use. So it's like, what is your secret sauce? I'm like, all this stuff I'm talking about that's on the screen behind me, all this stuff, like, those are just steps. They mean nothing if you don't show up and take action, right? And it's exactly what Tim and I are talking about here. Is like we're relating it back to a group that we've been a part of for a while that we just haven't taken action with. We have not shown up and taken action with that group, and because that, we've probably missed opportunity. We've probably missed connections. So and that's the thing. Like, it's like no matter what it is, like being successful in real estate, being successful in your day job, being successful in any other business, being successful in your personal life with your spouse or your significant other, showing up, taking action, right?
Yeah. Being intentional with
Right.
showing up, right?
Right.
You're intentionally showing up to achieve a goal. And you can just show up and make friends with people, but if you don't show up and ask specific questions and try to, capitalize on relationships and helping others and letting other people help you, that's really where the difference is. And you don't get, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people on social media. Everyone does. I mean, I'm hitting, the 5,000 friend limit on Facebook is a real thing for me. And I have an app that uses to get rid of people. There's so many people that have added me as friends that have never built a relationship with me that I have no idea who they are. And if they've never engaged with me, they've never sent any messages, this app deletes them. And I'm like, cool, it doesn't matter to me. And now, if, and it sounds awful to say it that way, but those people are potentially missing an opportunity because they don't know if they had contacted me when we originally reached out. Maybe I did need something that they could offer.
Mm.
Right. But you'll never know that because you never took action. You didn't show up. You didn't ask the questions. You weren't intentional. Like, all of those things that people talk about all the time is real. I mean, it's real. It doesn't matter if it's, it's real, whether you're trying to get started or you're trying to continue to grow.
All right. So cool. We talked about this, right? So I'm going to ask you, like, guys, that Tim and I didn't plan this. I'm literally putting him on the spot right here.
Oh, geez.
So leaving the event while you were there, or since you've been back, what is something you've put into action to show up for this group and make the most out of it in the next year?
Well, I said it already. It was I moved my calendar around to show up on the apartment event. That was the first thing I did. Was I moved everything around. I said, I actually last night was trying to look at how do I get rid of the noise in my calendar, because I'm not gonna lie, like, sometimes there's so many invites, like, you just kind of a bit overwhelmed, and I just started to ignore them. I was like, okay, well, I identified that. I said, I avoid these things because I feel overwhelmed. Well, how do I solve that? I simplify it. So that's what I'm trying to figure out now, is how do I get rid of all the stuff that I know I'm not going to attend, that I thought would be cool and interesting to attend, but it's overcommitted. And I said, what is the one thing or two things that I need to do in order to make sure that I'm getting the most out of this group and building relationships? And it was attend the multifamily apartment calls on Fridays. And then there's, the NC Go Bros. We have a Wilmington Go Bros. And I was like, we've talked about it all the time of like setting up a recurring, hey, we're going to go out to dinner or breakfast or lunch or whatever. Just put it on the calendar, because if it's on the calendar, it'll happen. So I'm working on coordinating that. And then also obviously showing up to my GoPod call every Friday.
Dude, I heard 4 things. I heard deleting.
I like to deleting.
Deleting to make more, right? Taking some Grover advice there. Deleting to make more. The GoPod, the Wilmington event, and showing up to that show to oh god, what do they call them? The multifamily
Micro
GoPod.
tribes.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
micro. Thank you.
Yep.
Um, see, it's not even on my head. I need to do more of it. The name of it. So, like four things, and none of them were huge, right? None of
No.
them were huge, massive steps, but they were action. Every single one of them was action. Um,
I like to talk about that too. Is like when you go to these conferences and relating it back to like a multifamily conference instead of GoBundance is like we meet a ton of people there, and they come up to us because we do a lot of social media content, and that's literally the point. Is so that people come up to us, right? We want them to feel like invited, like they know who we are because we talk
yeah,
about real stuff, real vulnerable, honest, transparent shit, and we want them to make relationships. And so many times people are like, they leave these events and they got a laundry list of things to do. I'm like, no, don't do that. Just pick like two, maybe three things, even one thing.
right,
Implement one change intentfully, and then in 90 days come back to an event like this. Get
right,
re-energized. Now that you've shifted your focus, like what now? Like, you turned your lighthouse on. What now can you see in the fog, right? Where's the next lighthouse that you need to turn on so you can continue to see in the fog? And
yeah,
every time you turn on a lighthouse, you're going to see what's in the fog a little bit differently because you're refocusing your time and your energy. And it's like that's why it's consistency. It's showing up all the time, not all the time, but consistently showing up, being intentful about implementing one, two, three things into your life, some easy things. Sometimes you can make those changes immediately, right? So, like, just taking action and doing those things is ultimately the small step. It's like that that photo everybody likes to share of like all this, the ladder, right? Where it's like there's one ladder that's huge steps and the guy's still at rung number one. And then there's another ladder that's got like a million little rungs in it. And it's like this guy's actually climbing up. It's like you
right.
need to take those every time you do those actions. That's one rung, that's another rung, that's another rung, that's another rung. And it's not something that happens overnight. It does take years. Most people, they look at what Tim and Tim have built over the last 2 years, and it's like, well, you also are forgetting about the 3.5 years before that, that was educating and networking and
Hmm.
taking those steps along the ladder in order to continue to build success and build the relationships and the things necessary that we needed in order to get to where we are today.
Yeah, and then and not letting excuses get in the way, right? Like, a
Everyone's
lot of
got a difficult life and things to do and
yeah,
responsibilities.
but
Got to
like
prioritize.
when COVID came around, you heard a lot of people going, "COVID's going on, I can't do anything." I got to be honest, guys. Like, I wasn't horribly strategic, but the one thing I did do was, this is going to sound a little weird, but the one thing I did do was like, I can network during COVID, which sounds a little weird, right? But I did. Like,
That's where I did
e-
most of my networking.
emails, Zooms, text, you name it. Like, that was if people weren't buying and selling, we could talk about buying and selling. We could talk about, doing deals and things like that. And lo and behold, man, I came out of COVID with like a pretty good network. Just because
Yeah, I
like
met you
I
in
did
COVID.
yeah, and it is because you don't let anything like that get in the way. You look at it and say, "Well, what can I do right now?" Right? Like, I got all these other things I can't do because I mean, I don't know, the store is closed, right? But what can I do right now? Just despite that. So not letting excuses get in the way. And then quite frankly, I'm as guilty as anybody on this one, not making excuses to beg out of something you just don't want to do. Um,
Yeah, it's very
yeah,
easy to come up with some kind of other excuse, I'll tell you.
yeah,
So,
for sure. So, all right, guys.
all right, well,
Uh,
that's all the time we got for today. Last reminder for those that are listening to this show, this offer is only to those people that listen to our show, and I always do it at the very end. Is our special for October is 50% off our coaching program because we want you guys to take action. We want you to be involved. We want to help you start to achieve your goals. So you need to be intentful. You need to make the decision. If you are interested in learning how to do what we do, we'd be more than happy to help you. Reach out. Again, it's a 50% off now through the end of October. So if you're interested, send a message to either Tim or myself, and we'll talk to you and make sure that we can help you out. So,
all right,
all right,
guys.
there's your
All right.
action step. So, all right, see you later.
See you
Peace.
guys.